So I made a video a couple of days ago talking about how smart Pokemon investors are not investing into the newest booster boxes, Mega Evolution and Phantasmal Flames at these current price points. And I think a lot of people agree with that. I don't think it's a crazy statement to make. But in this video, I just want to talk about how the performance of Mega Evolution has been kind of weird in my opinion. So Mega Evolution, it's still a very new set. I mean, it only came out a few weeks ago. So I know there's still a lot of time for things to change, but considering what's happening with the cards in the set, how expensive they are, it's kind of weird to see, the sealed product, the booster boxes, actually go down in value, also considering another factor here, which is what I want to talk about in this video. So, like I said, I understand. It's a brand new set. It's very new. It came out extremely expensive. I understand that part, okay? But looking at how it's performed, or how it did perform the first week, right? You can see just on release day, you saw that 300 boxes sold for $300, and then a couple days later, it went all the way to $340, 254 boxes sold. Now, obviously, this was a buyout of some sort, right? It went to like $350, but then, a few days later, it started to go back down to 320. Well, actually, here this one day went down to 306, but then went back to 320. So we were about 320 for, a week or so after, they dropped and sort of went back a little bit. It was at 320, and I really thought it would stay here at 320, but we've noticed in the past week it's gone down actually now to about $300. Some boxes even selling a little bit under that, and it's interesting. But like I said, I understand it's still extremely expensive. What, a $20 drop? That's really nothing. We're talking about maybe 7-8%. But the interesting part to me is looking at the card prices in the set. They haven't dropped at all, really. Some of them have, but total set value, they haven't really dropped at all. And the very interesting part is the fact this was, or it still is, because we haven't gotten the, or more product, but this is a waived release. And the price is already dropping before we got that second wave, because we haven't gotten the second wave of product. It hasn't really hit yet, at least to my knowledge. From what I've heard, I haven't heard anything. We've gotten the second wave and it's been being dumped. I haven't heard that, right? So this being the case, it's interesting because, this set was very hyped and it still is, popular, right? You can see the past week, still 40 to 50 boxes are being sold. That's still great for a $300 box. Like, don't get me wrong. But it is interesting that prices for the sealed product is already dropping back to basically what it was, just before release. And on release, it was basically the same price. So basically just release price. It's dropped all the way back to where it was on release. And the car prices haven't dropped at all. Some of them have actually gone up. And there's less sealed product out there. That is the interesting part. Now, it can be argued in a lot of ways. That possibly, right now, it's undervalued. You can argue that. I'm not saying it is. That's an argument you can make, that right now, it is undervalued. Like I said, I'm not claiming it is, but that's an argument you could make. Or an argument you can make is that it was overvalued. You could argue that maybe at release and here it was overvalued, and now it's just correcting to where it should have been. So those are, two different arguments you can make, and I'm not going to be on one side of those because honestly, I can't say that this is undervalued or overvalued. I mean, it's really hard to say, right? It's still brand new. It's really hard to see where this is going to go in a couple months because it literally came out a few weeks ago. But it is interesting to think about that factor, that we're now back down to where we were at release, which is still extremely expensive. But there's less product out there today because so many people have ripped this set. So many people. And there's less product, and it's just as expensive as it was. And also, we haven't gotten the second wave yet, at least to my knowledge. That is interesting. And it brings up, possibly, if this continues, which I don't know where the floor price for this thing is. I mean, it just hit where it was on release. So, we'll see if it goes lower. But this brings up an interesting point. Where will this go on the second, wave of product we're supposed to be getting? So apparently, I think it's like 40%. I think of the initial 100% we would have gotten is how the second wave is going to be. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like a 60-40 split, something like that. So it's interesting to think about that. Is that there's less booster boxes and the prices are going down. Does that mean possibly maybe hype is going down? It's kind of hard to say because, like I said, the singles are performing extremely well, but the booster boxes are going down. So then you can maybe argue more of the side that maybe it was overvalued at this point here, and now it's more of a correct price. That's very possible, but it's interesting to talk about and realize that this is going down in value, but the singles are so strong, and we still haven't gotten that second wave yet of more product. And what will that do to the prices of the booster box that's already falling, after it's gone up? So you can see here the total set value is at $4,300. Now, if you look at pretty much on release day or a few days after, I made some videos, consistently a couple of, days after release of this set. This was at $4,200. I remember. It is still there, and some cars have obviously gone down. More of the SARs have gone down, but the mega ultra rares have actually gone up in value. I believe these were in the 500s, and now they're in the 600s. Some other cards have held pretty strong, the Gardevoir, but yeah, it's very interesting. Like I said, there's less product out there. We haven't gone the second wave of product, and the singles are still at the same price basically, but the sealed product has gone down from where it was in the past few weeks. Interesting stuff. It also is very interesting when you consider, how expensive some of the cards are in the set in a PSA 10. You look at, recent sales for some of these, mega ultra rares or mega hyper rares, which I guess everyone's calling them. It's going for around $3,000 in a PSA 10. Obviously, coupling, this is a very hard card to pull. And, in a 10, I don't know how the gem rates are for this card, but $3,000 regardless is a very expensive card that, you could grade. And that is a large amount of money. The Gardevoir is also selling for about mid-2000s. So you can see there's some pretty big hitters if you get a PSA 10 for the set, yet the sealed is actually going down in value. Now, this is interesting, and I've kind of compared it, Destined Rivals. Destined Rivals right now is about $400. It's seen a recent decline because of the Pokemon Center drop of booster boxes, and the set value is much less than Mega Evolution. So once again, it brings up the argument, is Mega Evolution undervalued because, you see Destined Rivals at this point, or maybe Destined Rival, or maybe it's going to get to Destined Rivals levels or even more in a few months. Maybe, obviously we'll see what happens for the second wave of product to come, but maybe once, maybe Mega Evolution, let's say the second wave comes out, and let's say 3 months later, maybe you'll get to the level of Destined Rivals where, it is, maybe $400+, which would, make maybe more sense because the total set value is almost 2 times the amount of Destined Rivals. So there's a lot of things you can look at here and argue that, okay, Mega Evolution, it could be possibly undervalued just looking at the raw numbers of set value. But it's just interesting though. To me, this whole thing with Mega Evolution, just, there was a lot of popularity, which still is, I guess, of Mega Evolution, right? But it's just surprising, I guess, to me that at least they're not like, they didn't stay. I was really thinking they would probably stay at the 320s, and I know we're talking about $20 here, which isn't a big deal, but it's just the fact it did drop for me that we haven't gotten more product and less out there. That's like the biggest thing, and the card prices haven't dropped. It would make much more sense, in my opinion, if Mega Evolution, if the card prices dropped and also we're seeing the seal drop, it would make more sense to me. But the fact that we have so many expensive cards in Mega Evolution, the gold cards going for about $3,000 in a PSA 10, and the total set value hasn't dropped at all. Why is the seal going down? I mean, it is back to where it was previously at release, so I mean, there's that. But there's less product. And Destined Rivals, I don't believe was a wave release. So it's all very interesting with Mega Evolution. It can go in a lot of places. It'll be, like I said, more interesting when we get that second wave of product, what will happen, because it's really hard for me to imagine Mega Evolution getting down market price to $250, especially considering how expensive the set is, because we're talking about now in Scarlet and Violet where basically most booster boxes are above $250 except for like Scarlet and Violet base. So it's really hard to say it's going to go down to that level, but it's already dropping back to where it was. So when we get that second release of product, it's really hard to say that we're not going to go under 300. We're almost there already. So we'll see what happens when we get that second wave of release. But it brings up with me and talking about, and I guess here I'm just showing you guys the Mewtwo, the top chase card in Destined Rivals. It's not even $2,000. It's like 1,800, and the top 2 cards in Mega Evolution are more expensive in the PSA 10 than this. Obviously, this card is not as hard to pull as the gold one, but I'm just showing you guys that the value in Mega Evolution is very high. But this brings up for me with what I sort of talked about, in that video I made a few days ago. That's why I'm not buying Phantasmal Flames right now. The market, obviously, we're seeing some stagnation. Everyone's obviously talking about a lot about crashes, and I made plenty of videos talking about that. But this is why I'm a lot more cautious buying Phantasmal Flames, and I'm not pre-ordering at 330, because we're seeing Mega Evolution now, especially seeing some slight dips. It's on a wave release and it's not going up. It hasn't gone up in the past few weeks, even though the card price is still extremely strong. Phantasmal Flames, much smaller set. This is more expensive than Mega Evolution. I highly doubt the total set value is going to be more than Mega Evolution. Therefore, I don't think Phantasmal Flames, this is the bottom. I just don't think so. So this just makes me believe even more of why I shouldn't be buying Phantasmal Flames at this price, and how just the market now, it's in the short term, because I still think we're going to see an uptick probably towards the end of the year. But it does, in my opinion, just say how the market is right now and how you should be more careful, especially with these new releases that are coming out. Obviously, it's going to be more towards the end of the year, so we'll see if the market starts to change by then, because it's like a month away. But Mega Evolution right now has been performing, is more indicative of, Phantasmal Flames probably being a little bit expensive, because of just Mega Evolution being so expensive of a set, yet it's going down in value in terms of the booster box. So that's all I want to talk about in this video. I don't want to come across saying that Mega Evolution, it's crashing, because, it's not. But like I said, the interesting part is that it's a waived release. We didn't get all the product yet the prices are falling, and the card prices are super strong. What does that mean when we get that second wave of product? That's all I'm trying to say here. I'm not saying that it's crashing, don't get me wrong, but it's interesting. That's all I want to say. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.